Hello and welcome to The Pickle, brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, and co-hosted by Ethan O'Day and Jack Sundberg. Here on The Pickle, we discuss with our guests, ranging from coaches to professional athletes, the pickle of all things. Academics, sports, recruiting, high school to the pros, you name it, we talk about it. Our goal for the podcast is to give people insight into the sports world and student athletes' perspectives by sharing current and former athletes, educators, and coaches' real-life experiences. Telling story is one of the most powerful means for leaders to influence, teach, and inspire. These stories resonate in our culture, history, and lesson learned. The Pickle brings you these stories of adversity, triumph, failure, and determination to get inspired, to take them to your school, home, life, and court. Listen, learn, share, and enjoy. Today's guest is Deante Burton. Deante is a cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys. Previously, he has played for the Atlanta Falcons, Green Bay Packers, Houston Texans, and the Indianapolis Colts. Prior to his NFL career, he attended Kansas State University, where he was all Big 12 All-Academic. He was also an 1,000-yard receiver. Welcome to The Pickle.
All right, The Pickle Pod. We're back and we're better. Really excited for our guest this week. He's a former Kansas State Wildcat and current pro, Deante Burton. Thanks for coming on.
No problem, man. What's going on, fellas?
Yeah. I'm excited to have you on. I think you're going to have a lot of good insight, not only your professional experience, but obviously, you're playing at a Big 12 school. So it's going to be fun to hear what you got to say. So before we get into it, with all our guests, we do a little bit of the rundown. So it's just 5 quick questions just to get you to know you a little bit better, just so our guests can hear a little bit about you. So Ethan, take them away.
Let's do it.
All right, the rundown. Here we go. First question: dinner with one athlete.
J.R. Smith.
Really?
Like that
I feel
one.
like it'd be a good time.
Yeah, I like that.
That would be fun. That would be a fun dinner. Number one thing on the bucket list.
Trying to think. I want to swim with whale sharks, like those huge ones in Mexico.
Wow.
Kind of dope.
That's a new one. We've only had like skydiving, so you're really outside the box.
There we go.
That's great. Favorite movie of all time?
White Men Can't Jump.
Classic. Love that one. And how do you start your day every morning?
I meditate every morning.
Nice.
Go to bed.
Go. And final question here. Favorite quote?
It's a Nick Saban quote at the end of, I think it's Chop Wood, Carry Water, this book, but it just says it's going to take whatever it takes. So I always use that whenever I want something. I just think about it that way.
I like that. That's awesome.
There's the rundown.
There it is.
Made it through. All right, yeah. So we'll sort of just dive right in. So obviously, you're playing at Kansas State, Big 12, and playing football at that level. We've had a couple guests on. One particular, Darnell Davis, who played at Rutgers. He's just talking about the amount of hours you guys put in as a football program constantly. You guys are watching film, training, in the weight room. Talk a little bit about just like the amount of hours and commitment it is, at the next level when you're at college. Because it seems like, even at UConn, it's like those guys never left the facility. You're pretty much there all the time.
Yeah. I think it gets easier as time goes on because you acclimate to it. But I know for sure your freshman year, just with automatic study hours on top of your class schedule. Most guys redshirt, so you're in there lifting at 6 a.m., while other guys are asleep. So you're pulling 12-hour days pretty easy. You don't really get a chance to complain about it or anything, but I think you get used to it. I think you roll into it. I think that's where most guys make it. Most guys don't. It's just that time commitment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's, it's so hard to get ready for that until you really delve into it. And then when you're there, it's like, okay, this is what I got to do. Because it's tough to prepare for that, because in high school, you're playing multiple sports or you roll into your season and then that's it. So I definitely think that's true. Talk a little bit about, at the same time, you know, you're have a lot of time commitment, and, you know, you hinted at a little bit with study hours and stuff. You know, you're a guy who was all Big 12, all academic. Talk a little bit about how you balance both and find a way to make it work, because it's not easy. I mean, you're putting in some serious hours on both sides, you know, on the field and in the classroom.
For sure. I mean, I can definitely say that early in my collegiate career, I got crushed by the whole school and football thing.
Yeah.
Felt like I got kind of duped. I was like, that's not what I signed up for, is to do it this way.
Yeah.
But I think in most programs, I don't speak for every program, but at most, you're given every extent of help you can legally have. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you just got to have the wherewithal and, I guess, the lack of ego to ask a question and ask for help. Admit you don't get it, or admit that you got a lot on your plate. I think that eats up most people, is that they think they can do it on their own. It's okay to say you can't. Like I didn't figure that out until, you know, a little ways down the road, just like, hey, I'm getting crushed by this whole school thing. I think I failed math twice. And I was like, hey, we got to find another way.
Yeah.
And so once you get the help down and kind of figure out like how to prioritize what's important and what you need to get done and what you can and can't cram for, what you can and can't put off, you kind of figure out, okay, this is how I can do it. And I still don't know how I got all Big 12 or whatever academics, but I'll take it, man. Sounds great.
Yeah.
And how did you kind of figure out how to navigate through that time? Like, obviously, you have a lot of resources through your academic advisor, and, you know, you talk to upperclassmen maybe and figure out how to, you know, navigate this whole balancing school and full-time football job. Was there a time where it kind of clicked, where you were able to kind of have a better relationship with an academic advisor or a professor or other teammate, where things got easier?
Definitely. I think, probably as childish as it sounds, just seeing the guys who didn't have to go to study hall, and I'm like, well, why don't you need to be in here? And they're like, oh, if you have this kind of GPA, or if you're allotted this much time away, if you know, kind of do what you're supposed to do. So once I figured that out from the upperclassmen, and then kind of got to the point where I could talk to my my academic advisors and ask them questions, I'm like, all right, well, how can I do this? Then it just clicked. I would say that was my sophomore, probably going into junior year. It just became super easy after that. So
how about just like the jump going from high school to college? I mean, it's like when I was coming up, Ethan's coming up, and, you know, you just hear about it all the time. Just, you know, it's a big jump, but it's like you hear about it, but you never really process it. Talk about your transition and where you were like, man, this is going to be work.
I got pretty lucky. I ended up playing in my college, like my hometown was my college town. So
right.
I got extremely lucky with that. So, I mean, I knew every coach on that staff for probably 5-6 years at a time, you know? So I've known everyone. I knew most of the players just from being in the same town, going out, seeing them guys. So it wasn't too hard for me to make friends and kind of adjust to like the new system. But I know for a lot of guys, just that freedom, you kind of you're given this whole new freedom. You can do whatever you want. You know, you don't have a bedtime. No one's checking in on you. No one's really waking you up. So I know for a lot of guys, just being where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there was the hardest part, because you don't have, you know, mom and dad aren't at home shaking you and telling you to get going. So for me, I mean, my transition was pretty easy. I wouldn't say it was too bad. I would say it was just on the field was the hardest part for me.
And what do you, on the field, what do you mean? Just as far as the workouts and stuff like that, or strenuous?
Just, I mean, I've never been too bad with workouts, but I think realizing that, like, okay, you're starting to play with like grown men now. These guys are 20, you know what I mean? These are 20-something-year-olds, and I came in early. I was 17 years old,
really
trying to get on the field with, you know, guys past the legal drinking age. So it was a different thing, you know.
The double red shirts. Yeah.
Exactly. Gray shirt, red shirt, you know, guys like that. So realizing like, okay, these guys have kids. Some of these guys have aspirations to play for money. So it's not, you know, it's not so much, hey, just you and your buddies getting together playing football for your high school anymore. It became more of a little bit more of a job.
Yeah.
And so you grew up in the same town that Kansas State is in. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were just talking about that a little bit. Like, was it were you able to like work out with those guys like early on and like had a relationship with some of the guys before and understand the system a little bit better? Like how did you put yourself in a situation like in high school before you even made the commitment to go there, like to do so well there?
I mean, I really wasn't committed there until late. So originally I was going to go to Oklahoma State. So a part of like the courting process, I think, for the K-State coaches and their recruiting process was getting me around those guys. And I mean, they recruit a lot of guys out of Kansas. So I had either played or grew up with someone else's brother who's on the team. So a lot of those guys would reach out once they found out K-State offered me and kind of just invited me in. You know, I hung out, would go to their houses during the day, or I remember eating receiver dinner. We'd go over to the coach's house and we'd all hang out. So I kind of got to know them pretty easy. Workouts wise, I would go watch, which was probably the worst thing I could do because it just psyched me out. Like at a young age, like, this is miserable. Yeah. How could you do this? But for the most part, I think in any sport, any conditioning, it sucks. It's not going to be fun. So
no,
you just kind of get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's funny, earlier you talked about, you're like, when you got there, you're like, man, this is kind of like a job. And I think it's so hard because our whole lives, you know, even I'm still playing baseball now, you do it for fun. You know, that's why you start to play. But at the end of the day, it's work and you're doing your job and you got to show up to the field and, you know, people are depending on you. So talk a little bit about just how that was like, you're able to still have fun, but also understand that you're a professional and you're doing your work.
The best way I've ever actually heard it put was recently we got a strength coach and he just breaks it down that like, you guys are all grown men playing a kid's game for a king's ransom. You know, like, we're extremely overpaid for what we do. We all agree on it. Like, I mean, some of the numbers you see come across the ticker are just outrageous, especially when you're like, dude, doctors don't make half this, you know?
Yeah.
And we just chase a ball. So it's, you know, we're paid well for it. And
definitely,
I think sometimes you can kind of get caught in the fact that like, okay, this is how I support my family. And unfortunately, like, hey, I'm coming to take somebody's job. I'm like taking food off another person's plate. And that's an unfortunate part of the business, but it wouldn't be, you know, what it was if that's not how you had to go about things. Like if everyone could do it, then it wouldn't be fun. You know, it wouldn't be the best of the best. It wouldn't be elite talent. So just remembering that it's still a kid's game. You know, we're still literally chasing a ball for a living the same way you did in your backyard or whatever. You just happen to get paid a lot of money to do it. And so you should have way more fun than you did back then.
Exactly.
So,
no, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah. What about just, you know, I think everyone thinks that, you know, even when I got drafted, it was like, boom, oh, like you're in the big leagues, like you're doing it, like it's awesome, but that's not really, you know, there's the minor leagues, there's the whole grind of it. And obviously you've had a unique experience as well of jumping around different teams. And I think for a lot of our student athletes and the parents and the listeners, you know, we had a guy in a couple of weeks ago, he was an MLS draft pick, like 6 overall. And he was like, I'm making like 40K and I'm working an off-season job. But everyone looks at it as like, I'm a pro, you know? So talk about a little bit your experience, because it's different. It's not just like you get picked up and then it's that. I mean, you're an undrafted free agent, you're working, you're grinding, and there's a whole uncertainty to your life, you know, daily. So talk about that a little bit.
I mean, I think, of course, like with you know, playing baseball, you get it. And I have a couple buddies who played well in college and now they're in, you know, the farm system or the minor leagues. And then, you know, you thought, like, you hear that guy's name from college, like, oh, this dude's going to be a freak. And then you just got to work through the system. And it doesn't mean they're any less talented than they were or anything like that, but it's just a part of the system. And I know for me coming out, like, going to Atlanta and everyone saw like the receiving core they had, it was already going to be like an uphill battle just to even make the roster. So, you know, just figuring that out. And then you're not getting paid that number that they tell you. I don't know who started this lie or like who kind of threw that out there that like this number you see is that goes into your bank account. I'm sure, you know, but there's so many people that touch that number before you get to it. It's not at all how it is. And, you know, the uncertainty of where you're at, like, I mean, we talked a little bit before the show. I've bounced around, you know, 3 teams in a month, just, you know, sign a lease somewhere maybe. And you gotta, hey, I'm going to be out of here in 2 days. So can I just pack this up and we just call it good? Like it doesn't work that way. No one really looks out for you. So there's a lot more expenses that go into it than I think people, understand, but it's just a part of the business. It's a weird part of it, but it's definitely what makes it what it is.
Yeah. And I think Ethan wanted to bring up a point of just like, your whole life you're just playing football. And I think, Lindsay had mentioned it before is, you're trying to find some different interests because, at the end of the day, we can only play for so long. And I think Ethan is an advocate of this as well, just finding different interests, things that, you might enjoy outside the game of football.
Definitely. I think you can drown in it. It's like how I look at it. If you just immerse yourself in it way too much, you'll drown yourself of it. You kind of lose your love for it. I think we've all known guys and girls who've been like so dialed into one thing for so long that it's like, do you even enjoy it? Or are you just like doing it because it's all you do? You know what I mean?
100%.
There's guys in the facility where it's like, you don't go home. Like there's nothing left to do here today. You know what I mean? We've been here all day, like you've done it. It's okay to go like to do something else. So I try to find all kinds of wild things that I've never done and stuff that I find interesting and just go do it. And especially, I'm young. I don't have children. I don't have too much responsibility. So cut loose as much as I can, enjoy life while I got it.
Yeah, we've talked about that with a lot of guests, is just finding something else outside of your sport to give you worth and figure out something else that you're good at. Because when you do just one thing for so long, it just becomes a part of your identity and you need to prove to yourself that you can do different things, which I think is so important. Talk a little bit about when you became a pro. How did the lifestyle change as far as taking care of your body, sleeping, nutrition? I know that a lot of athletes see a shift in that coming from college. You can get away with some of those things. And then going into the pro lifestyle where everything's a little bit more rigorous and it's a job. Like you said, like you see guys getting cut all the time. I saw that overseas the first time and I was like, whoa, when my teammates got cut. I'm like, I better step it up.
It's weird.
So it's a weird shift, but talk a little about how you made that change, taking care of it.
I think I could speak for most of us, and like we probably didn't take care of ourselves in college to the extent that we could have. I've had those 2 a.m. McDonald's nights and Taco Bell, 50-cent Wells and things like that. You know how you treat yourself, so like you enjoyed it, and I think you should. But once I got to the pros, and I was blessed, I had a great room to watch Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu, Justin Hardy, watch those guys kind of take care of themselves. I mean, Julio's kind of a freak, not kind of, but he's just a specimen. So you kind of watch him and you're like, all right, I can't do some of this, but I can do that. And I mean, that guy sleeps like 10 hours a day. Like he has no problem just getting in the bed and be like, I'm done. So his big thing to us as rookies was like, even if you're not knocked out, like just get in bed. Like there's no point for you to be up on your feet, like just doing nothing. So he was always talking about rest. The diet was another thing. Like I ate pretty terribly. I used to crush ice cream, gummy bears, just all that, which I think you should still treat yourself. But I found out that like you can help your body a long ways down the road with inflammation and blood flow and all that stuff just by what you put in your body. So, we were blessed to have good nutritionists too at this level, who's, they're paid well to take care of you and make sure that machine keeps moving. So once they kind of put me on and, hey, this is what you should be doing for your body type and you need to eat this, and that, it's up to you to listen or not. And there's guys like Chad Johnson who can crush.
That's exactly what I was saying. I was going to ask you.
Those interviews are crazy.
Dude, he's got it. And I'm sure there's a lot of other guys who can too. Just their metabolisms, the amount of calories, they burn in a day. What he doesn't talk about a lot, I've, seen him a couple of times, is he works out like a freak. Like he works out like he's still playing. He still does 2 a days. He's still running for whatever reason. So like a lot of people think he just sits and eats McDonald's, but I know guys and I've seen him, like he just he still works out. So you burn the calories, you can treat yourself that way, but I don't know, I found out I move a little better without it. So
I think a lot of times that we're looking now at high school sports and stuff, there's a lot of kids who aren't really playing. Like, I mean, I've talked to high school coaches and be like, yeah, we can't even field a JV team. We don't have enough kids. And just talk, or actually before that, something a little bit better is like, you know, we talk about the rigors of being a student athlete and going to play sports, and, you know, you're on scholarship, maybe you're on partial scholarship, and there's a lot of uncertainty to it. You know, if being a student athlete is so hard and playing at the next level is so hard, you know, why even play sports? You know, what's the importance of playing sports, and why do you think it's important, and how to help you?
I mean, I think like you, especially you guys played basketball, so he knows AAU. Like, you guys have to travel. You know, to me, that was the best part of sports as a kid, is I went places that I had no business going. You know, we're in small towns in Oklahoma, and we're in Colorado, Arkansas. We're playing 7-on-7 in Texas. We played in California, Oregon, like all these places that I thought, like, I'll never, what the hell would I do in Oregon? You know?
Yeah.
I'm never going to get there. So like, I was able to see things and learn, like, oh, like, this is what the West Coast is like, or this is what Texas is like. And I didn't have to learn it from a book or someone telling me about it. I got to experience it firsthand. And I think, I think kids today that like choose like, oh, well, I want to play one sport and I don't want to play any other sports, or, you know, I'm only going to do football year round. Like, you kind of miss out, because I think sports teaches you a lot. Each sport teaches you something different. Very few people are amazing at everything. So you might be a hell of a basketball player, but can't hit a baseball to save your life. But you build character in that failure. You build a whole bunch of character. There was a lot of things that I did that I wasn't as good at as my friends, and it made no sense because I was way more athletic, way bigger, way faster. But it was something that built character because it took effort. And I think kids now that are just like, no, I don't want to do it just because, it's a little different. But I mean, kids now also, you got Twitter and all that, and you can be an All-American without really having to play, you know? So,
Shoot, you got everyone's got a blue check mark these days. I'm like,
which
geez,
is strange. Kids are like 15 with like 100,000 followers. I'm like, I don't really know if that's like okay, but
yeah. No, I think that's so funny that you said that, because I think we've asked a lot of our guests this question, and Ethan, you can probably say the same of you know, what sports does. And, you know, of course they talk about camaraderie, working well with others, but talking about the places that it's brought you, I think is really cool. And even for me in college, like, I never really flown a lot in my life. All of a sudden I'm flying to Texas, Florida, California, like stuff that, you know, without baseball, I would have never seen these places.
All to play a game that you could play in your backyard, you know? So you catch yourselves in a place like Morgantown, West Virginia, or Green Bay, Wisconsin. What the hell am I doing out here? But you get to play a game, and that game took you all these different places. You met all these different people. You got to do all these kind of different kind of things, all because you had fun running around, you know?
Yeah. Playing overseas, that was weird too. I was in Australia. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, driving on the wrong side of the road. Every day I ask myself that question. It's cool. Yeah. And then I was in Germany too, driving a smart car. Just crazy. It's so crazy the places sports can take you. It's really.
How was
good.
Australia?
It was cool. The biggest thing was driving on the opposite side of the car and the opposite side of the road. I was terrified. I don't know how I didn't crash. And there's the whole way the rotary system works. Like, I drove down the wrong side of the freeway once in the middle of the night and had to do a U-turn. But I figured it out. I don't know how I did, but
it's crazy too, because when he played in Germany, Ethan's 6'9", and his roommate, you know, of course, was 6'9", 6'10", and they were both squeezed in a little tiny smart car. So it's like this little 2-seater.
6'9", dude. Yeah.
It ain't right.
Hilarious stories, but yeah, it's the fun of it. Like, you see these guys, a lot of guys in basketball world are overseas for like 10 plus years, bouncing from country to country, and you can see it in football and other sports too. So yeah, that's a great answer. Just being able to see different things. You can't learn it from just in the classroom. You got to get out there and experience life. So that's an awesome answer. Yeah, that's awesome. And really just sort of got one last question for you. You know, knowing what you know now, you know, as Deante Burton, you know, what would you go back and tell a younger Deante Burton, you know, maybe when you were a freshman or sophomore in high school? You know, what would you lend a little ear of advice?
Probably tell myself, like, it's okay to mess up. You know, I think I don't know about you guys, but in Kansas, like it's a kind of an under-recruited spot for a lot of sports.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the time, I think I put way more pressure on myself to make it than needed. You know, guys make it from anywhere. Guys play at community colleges. Guys play at D2, D3s. Every year you hear about some guy for the Patriots who played at, you know, Kalamazoo Tech, who's, you know, making plays on TV. So I used to think that I had to stress myself and stretch myself to the extent of like, yeah, you have to make it on TV to make it here. You have to be this big name. And looking back on it, it doesn't matter. If you can ball, you can ball. They're going to find you. It might be hard for you. It might be, you know, you might have some obstacles that other guys didn't have growing up in the big states, but it's going to find it. You know, you'll find your way. And that, and probably just set a bigger goal. Like throw it all the way out there. I think when I was a kid, my thing was like, I just want to make it to the NFL. Like, I didn't really care if I played. Like, that was just as far as I wanted to go. And then, you know, over time you get there, and you just, when you get to your goal, you got to set another one. And that's a weird time in your life. So I would tell myself to shoot for the stars.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think it's so often, especially nowadays with like all the social media and everything, it's like sort of overbearing. And it's really scary to dream big, because it's like it feels like the world is watching you. But I think to really dream big, I mean, that's like stuff that, you know, you're scared to tell people. And, you know, I'm even just getting chills just thinking about like, man, how big do you want to make it? Because you can go get it. But
you can do anything you want. You just throw it out there far enough. Sometimes I think people are afraid, like you said, to do it. Especially, like you said, high school kids. Like I remember telling people I wanted to play in the NFL. They thought I was crazy. Like, it's not gonna happen. Like, you know what I mean? It's a rare thing, but if you throw it out there as far as you possibly can and just stay on that path to get it. Don't, you know, make the sacrifices you got to make to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Probably do some pretty cool stuff down the road.
Yeah, such a good point too about not being so worried about what school you go to or high major, mid major, low major. Like we were talking about that with other guests before too. It's like you just got to go somewhere that you can produce and be yourself and be able to play the game and be you. And exactly what you said, like, and you see all these pro guys coming up now. It's becoming more prominent, coming from mid majors in basketball, low community colleges or junior colleges to football and baseball. You just got to be able to go to a place where you can be you. Don't worry about, you know, getting seen. And that's great advice for sure. Kids listening.
For sure.
Yeah, Deante. Oh shoot, hold on. Guys, I almost lost it. Sorry. I was about to run out of battery. Deante, appreciate you coming on, man. I think you definitely, people are going to be excited to listen to this one, you know, not only because, you know, you're a Dallas Cowboy, but I think you have a really cool perspective on stuff. I think you get so caught up, like you're saying, you just like, some people just drowned in it, you know, and it's okay to take a step back and see what else is out there and find different interests and stuff. So appreciate you coming on. Thanks, man.
Hey, no problem. Appreciate it, fellas.
Yeah. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to The Pickle, who is brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, whose goal is to use the power of sport to unleash the athlete's potential in the academic arena.